I've never been the kind of person who tells ghost stories. Honestly, I used to roll my eyes whenever friends brought up paranormal stuff. But what happened in that cabin? I don't know how else to explain it. It started as nothing more than a weekend trip. 4 of us, me, my best friend Daniel, his girlfriend Sarah, and my cousin Malik, had been talking for weeks about getting out of the city. Somewhere quiet, away from traffic and buzzing lights, a place where we could breathe and maybe get drunk around a fire without neighbors complaining. Daniel was the one who found the cabin. He said his uncle knew about it, an old property tucked into the woods, not far from a lake that hadn't seen tourists in years. When we pulled up, the first thing that struck me was how dark the trees felt. Not the usual kind of forest dark, but a thick, heavy kind, like the shadows were swallowing the light. The cabin itself sat hunched at the edge of a clearing, its roof sloping under the weight of moss, its windows cloudy with grime. It didn't look welcoming, but it didn't look dangerous either. Just forgotten. Inside, it smelled of old wood and damp leaves. The air was cooler than outside, still, almost stagnant. There wasn't much furniture, just a couple of chairs, a wooden table, a narrow couch, and a fireplace that hadn't been used in years. The floorboards creaked when you walked, and if you stood still long enough, you could hear the faint drip of water somewhere behind the walls. We dropped our bags and claimed corners like it was a sleepover. Sarah pulled back one of the curtains and laughed. "Cozy," she said, though her voice was thin. Daniel grinned at her. "Better than the city, right?" We tried to convince ourselves it was. We opened beers, tossed our phones on the table, and talked about starting a fire once it got dark. Malik took a video, panning across the room with his phone camera, narrating like it was a vlog. I remember laughing at him, telling him nobody would care about his shaky footage of dusty walls. But later, I'd think about that video more than anything else. As the evening stretched on, the light outside bled into shades of gray. The woods pressed closer against the windows, and the cabin grew colder, though no wind seeped in. At some point, Daniel lit a lantern and set it on the table. Its glow was small, leaving the corners in shadow. That was when Sarah mentioned something strange. "Did you hear that?" she asked. We all went quiet. The only sound was the tick of the lantern's fuel and the distant settling of wood. "Hear what?" I said. "Like whispering." "Just for a second." Daniel smirked, shook his head. "Probably the wind in the trees." Except the trees outside weren't moving. The air was still, heavy. We shrugged it off. Malik pulled out a deck of cards, and we played until the lantern started to dim. When we finally decided to call it a night, we unrolled sleeping bags on the floor, joking about who would snore loudest. But before we fell asleep, Malik reached for his phone. He frowned, staring at the screen. "What?" Daniel asked. Malik turned the phone so we could all see. It was the video he had filmed earlier, his shaky tour of the cabin. Only now, as the footage panned across the room, there was something faint underneath his voice. A low murmur, like someone talking just out of earshot. "Wait, play that again," I said. He replayed it, turning the volume up. The murmur was still there. Words we couldn't quite make out layered beneath his own. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "That's creepy." "It's probably just the mic," Daniel said. "Old phone, crappy audio." But when Malik scrolled further, opening a second video he had taken outside, the same murmur was there too, slightly louder this time. I remember the way the 4 of us stared at each other in the dim lantern light. No one said it out loud, but we were all thinking the same thing. If that sound wasn't coming from us, then who, or what, had the phone picked up? We tried to laugh it off, told ourselves it was nothing, but as I laid back in my sleeping bag, staring at the ceiling beams above, I couldn't shake the thought. The cabin was silent around us. Yet on Malik's phone, someone else had been speaking. I don't know how long I laid there before drifting off, but when I did sleep, it was shallow and restless. The kind of sleep where every creak of the floorboards makes your body tense, every shift of someone's breathing feels too close. At some point in the night, I woke up to the sound of Malik whispering. At least, that's what I thought it was. I rolled over, blinking into the darkness. The lantern had burned out, leaving only a faint wash of moonlight through the grimy window. "Malik?" I whispered, but he was asleep, turned away from me. His phone lay by his side, the screen dark. I held still, straining to listen. That's when I realized the whisper wasn't coming from him, it was coming from his phone. I reached over and picked it up. The screen lit in my hand, startling me a recording was playing. I hadn't touched anything, hadn't pressed play, yet the voice kept spilling through the tiny speaker. At first, I thought it was just static, crackling, low, uneven. Then, words began to form. A man's voice, gravelly and slow, muttering in a tone so quiet I had to bring the phone against my ear to hear. The hairs on my arms rose. "Don't let them leave." My stomach dropped. I sat up quickly, clutching the phone, my breath catching in my throat. "Hey," I whispered, shaking Malik's shoulder. He stirred, groggy, frowning at me. "What? Your phone's. It's playing something." He blinked, confused, took the phone from me. The screen was open on his recordings app. A file time-stamped only minutes earlier was playing. "I didn't record this," he muttered. The others began to stir, Sarah rubbing her eyes, Daniel groaning, asking what the hell we were doing. Malik replayed the file, holding the phone out so everyone could hear. The voice came again, clearer this time. A low whisper, but deliberate. "Don't let them leave." We all froze. "That's not funny," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "It's not a joke," Malik said sharply. "I didn't record this." My phone was next to me the whole time. Daniel grabbed it, squinting at the screen. Could be a prank app. Some creepy shit like that. Malik shook his head. "I don't download that garbage." We sat there in silence, the weight of the recording settling like a stone in our chests. Sarah hugged her knees to her chest. "Maybe it picked up. I don't know, a radio signal? Some interference?" I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to. But when Daniel tried to laugh it off, his voice cracked. I could tell he didn't buy his own explanation. The rest of the night, none of us really slept. We huddled around the dying lantern, too unsettled to close our eyes. Every sound in the cabin seemed amplified, the groan of the beams, the faint scuttle of something in the walls, the long, dragging silence in between. By morning, the gray light through the windows felt like a relief. We packed up our sleeping bags quickly, talking over each other, insisting we should go for a walk, get some air. No one said we were scared, but the way we moved told the truth. We left the cabin door wide open behind us. The forest was silent. No bird song, no rustle of branches, not even the buzz of insects. Just the crunch of our footsteps on the damp earth. We followed the path down toward the lake. Its surface was still, like glass, reflecting the pale sky. We sat on the shore for a while, not saying much, just breathing in the open space, trying to shake the heaviness of the night. After a while, Sarah pulled out her phone. "Look," she said. Her face was pale. She showed us her screen. The voice recorder app was open. A file had appeared on her phone too. Timestamp only an hour ago. She pressed play with a shaking finger. This time, it wasn't a man's voice. It was hers. Only, it wasn't. It sounded like her, but not quite. The cadence was wrong, the tone hollow, like someone imitating her from memory. And what it said made my blood run cold. "They don't know what's in the house. Don't tell them. Don't let them leave." Sarah dropped her phone like it burned her. It landed in the dirt. We all just stared at it. None of us wanted to touch it. Daniel tried to force a laugh. "It's some kind of sick joke. Someone screwing with us. Has to be. But Malik shook his head. There's no service out here. No Wi-Fi. How would anyone be messing with our phones? We all looked back up the path toward the cabin. Its shadow sat hunched against the trees, dark and waiting. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. Not with the phones, not with us, but with that place. And the thought that chilled me more than anything was this. If the house didn't want us to leave, what would it do to keep us there? We didn't go back inside right away. None of us wanted to. The air by the lake felt safer, cleaner somehow, though it carried the same dead silence as the woods. No birds, no insects, no life, just us, 4 figures huddled together in the open, afraid to admit we were afraid. But eventually, we had to go back. Our stuff was inside, and none of us wanted to drive out in the middle of nowhere without packing up properly. So, against the weight in my chest, we walked up the path again, toward the cabin. The closer we got, the more wrong it looked. I swear the angle seemed different, as if the roof leaned heavier, the windows more clouded, the door slightly ajar like it had been waiting. Inside, the air hit us like a wall, damp, sour, colder than the woods outside. The smell of old wood had deepened overnight into something sharper, metallic almost. Sarah wouldn't go further than the doorway. She stood with her arms crossed tight, whispering, "It feels worse in here." She wasn't wrong. Malik muttered something about grabbing our stuff fast and leaving. Daniel, always the skeptic, tried to play it cool. "We'll be fine," he said. "It's just an old cabin. Don't let your heads get carried away." But his voice was too loud, too forced, like he was trying to convince himself. We started packing. That's when Sarah's phone buzzed from the table where she'd left it. The screen lit up. None of us had touched it. Another recording. This one had no timestamp. Just a blank, nameless file. Daniel sighed, picked it up. "Enough with this crap." He pressed play. The room filled with sound. It was us. Not just voices, our voices. All 4 of us. Talking, laughing, moving around the cabin. At first, I thought it was just a recording from earlier in the night. But then I realized something impossible. It wasn't from earlier. It was us, right now. I heard my own voice on the recording say, "That's when Sarah's phone buzzed from the table where she'd left it." And I froze, because those were the exact words I had just thought. The others went pale. Malik whispered, It's recording us." But that wasn't the worst part. The recording kept playing past that point, past the moment we were living in. And then it shifted. The voices on the phone weren't laughing anymore. They weren't even speaking normally. They were screaming. Raw, panicked, desperate screams, our screams. We stood there, horrified, listening to our own future selves begging, crying, choking on terror. Daniel's voice broke through on the recording, screaming my name over and over until it cut off with a harsh crack. The phone went silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Sarah started shaking. "I want to go. I want to go now." Daniel clenched his jaw, trying to stay in control, but his hands were trembling. "It's just some sick glitch. Someone planted this." "No one planted it," Malik snapped. His face was pale, his eyes wide. "There's no one out here but us." I don't know what possessed me, but I picked the phone up again. My thumb hovered over the screen, and before I could stop myself, I hit record. We stood in dead silence, listening to the faint hiss of static. I stopped the recording and played it back immediately. At first, nothing. Just quiet. Then, my own voice, clear as if I'd spoken it aloud. "I shouldn't have come here. I shouldn't have come here. I shouldn't have." I dropped the phone. It clattered on the floor. "That wasn't you," Sarah whispered. But it was my voice. Exactly my voice. Just wrong. Like it wasn't remembering me, it was rehearsing me. That broke something in us. We didn't finish packing. We didn't care about the food or the sleeping bags or the half-empty bottles. We just grabbed what we could and bolted out the door. The path back to the car felt endless. My chest ached from the cold air, from the way every step seemed to sink heavier into the soil. When we reached the clearing where we'd parked, Daniel cursed under his breath. The car doors were open. All of them. Like someone had been waiting inside and had just stepped out. The keys were still in the ignition. The battery was dead. We stood there, staring at the lifeless vehicle, our only way out, and that's when Sarah's phone buzzed again from her pocket. Another recording. I'll never forget the sound of it. Because this one wasn't just voices. It was breathing. Not ours. Something slower, deeper, wet, like lungs pulling through water. And beneath it, faint but unmistakable, a whisper. They always leave the car behind. We didn't speak. None of us wanted to. Words felt dangerous, like giving shape to what was happening might invite it closer. Daniel slammed the hood of the car shut after a pointless attempt to start the engine. "Battery's fried," he muttered. His face was tight, colorless. "We walk," Malik said. His voice shook, but he said it anyway. We followed the road back. "Somebody will come by. We'll get out of here." The problem was, the road was just a dirt stretch that twisted through miles of forest. The nearest town was hours away, and night was already slipping back through the trees. But staying wasn't an option. None of us wanted to be near that cabin again. So we walked. The woods felt different now. The trees pressed in closer, their trunks crowding the path. The silence was crushing, so heavy it made our ears ring. Every step sounded too loud, too exposed. Sarah clutched her phone in both hands like it was a lifeline. She wouldn't put it away, though every so often the screen lit on its own, another file appearing. She refused to play them. But around dusk, one of them started playing by itself. No one touched it. No one even breathed on the screen. Yet the recording app opened, and sound spilled out. It was us again. Walking. Breathing. Our footsteps crunching leaves. Exactly as we were doing now. And then my voice, my own, unmistakable, spoke. "We're not leaving the woods." I stopped dead. My stomach twisted. The others froze too. Malik swore under his breath. Then Daniel snapped. He grabbed the phone from Sarah's hands and hurled it into the trees with a roar. It vanished into the underbrush. For a moment, the silence returned. No voices. No recordings. Just the dead quiet of the forest. But then, from somewhere deep among the trees, Sarah's phone began to ring. A shrill, tinny sound that echoed in the emptiness. Ringing, ringing, ringing. "Keep walking," Daniel hissed. "Don't stop." We did. Faster now, almost running, stumbling over roots and stones. My throat burned, my chest ached, but I couldn't shake the sound of that phone following us. First ringing, then buzzing, then recording again. By the time darkness swallowed the road, we were half mad with exhaustion. Our flashlights barely cut through the blackness, the beam catching only the endless twist of trees. That's when we saw it. The cabin. Standing just ahead of us, hunched in the clearing, its windows glowing faintly with lantern light. Sarah screamed. Malik cursed. Daniel stopped dead, shaking his head. No, we left it. We walked straight. We didn't turn. This isn't possible. But it was there. The same moss roof cabin, the same crooked door, waiting. And from inside, we heard it. Our voices. Laughing. Talking. Moving around like we had the night before. We stood frozen, staring as the sound carried through the cracked windows. The longer I listened, the more I realized something that made my blood turn to ice. The voices weren't just repeating what we'd already done. They were ahead of us, talking about things we hadn't said yet, about things we hadn't done. Sarah turned and ran, just bolted into the trees. Daniel shouted after her, then Malik sprinted too. I followed, crashing through the underbrush, branches tearing in my arms, my lungs burning. I don't know how long we ran. The forest seemed endless, shifting, like the trees were folding in on themselves. Every direction felt the same, every path leading nowhere. At some point, I stumbled, hit the ground hard. My phone tumbled from my pocket, screen lighting up in the dark. A new file was waiting. With shaking hands, I pressed play. It was my voice again, but not scared, not panicked, calm, tired. I never made it out of those woods. None of us did. The cabin keeps us. It always keeps us. The recording clicked off, and in the silence that followed, I realized I couldn't hear the others anymore. No Malik, no Daniel, no Sarah. Just the trees. And somewhere, faint and steady, the sound of my own voice calling out from the dark. I want to tell this carefully because I know how it's going to sound. Even now, years later, I struggle to believe it myself. But the four of us lived it, every second of it, and not all of us made it out the same. It started with a trip that wasn't supposed to be anything more than a getaway. A weekend away from the noise, from school, from jobs, from everything that made us feel like we were already getting old before we even had a chance to live. It was me, my best friend Ryan, his girlfriend Claire, and our mutual friend Jess. We weren't thrill seekers, not really. The cabin wasn't chosen because it was spooky or abandoned. It was cheap, that's all. Ryan had found the listing online, a rustic mountain cabin. Nothing fancy, just walls, a roof, and enough beds for 4. We drove out late Friday evening, heading deeper and deeper into the woods. The road narrowed until it was barely more than 2 tire tracks carved into dirt. By the time we pulled up to the cabin, the sun had dipped low, throwing the woods into shadow. The place looked wrong somehow. Not haunted, not cursed, not anything obvious, just off. It leaned slightly to one side, as though the earth beneath it had shifted and never corrected itself. The roof sagged. The porch was rotting in places. And yet, the moment we killed the engine, I felt something settle into my chest, like a quiet weight I couldn't explain. Claire wrinkled her nose. "This looks condemned," she muttered. Ryan tried to laugh it off, shouldering the cooler as he got out of the car. Hey, it was $60 for the whole weekend. What'd you expect, a lake view and a hot tub? Jess smiled weakly, but didn't say anything. She'd been quiet most of the drive, staring out the window like her thoughts were somewhere far away. Inside, the cabin was smaller than the pictures had suggested. One main room with a fireplace, a couch that looked older than we were, a table with 2 uneven chairs, and a door that led into a narrow hallway. From the hall branched 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. That was it. No electricity. No cell service. Just a few lanterns left behind, their fuel barely enough to last the night. I remember thinking it would be fine. We had food, drinks, sleeping bags. We'd make it work. And for the first few hours, that's exactly what we did. We lit a fire. Ryan put on some music from a little battery speaker. Claire complained about the smell of mildew but settled in. We played cards. We laughed. It felt like any other night in any other place. But little details started nagging at me. Like how every door in the cabin had the same knob, round, brass, and colder to the touch than they should have been, even near the fire. Or how the windows looked out into darkness, but no matter how I angled the lantern, I couldn't see more than a few feet into the trees. Around midnight, Jess excused herself to bed. She looked pale, her eyes heavy. I figured she was just tired from the trip. Claire followed a little later, dragging Ryan with her. That left me alone in the main room, sitting by the fire. The silence was thick. Even the woods seemed quiet. No crickets, no owls, no rustling. Just the pop of firewood. I thought I heard movement once, from the hall. Soft, like someone shifting their weight on old floorboards. I got up, lantern in hand, and peeked down the hallway. Both bedroom doors were closed. I told myself it was the cabin settling. That's what old houses do, right? They creak, they sigh, they groan. I went to bed not long after. The first sign that something was wrong didn't come until morning. I woke up to Ryan swearing. "Door's stuck," he said. I sat up, blinking at the dim light coming in through the window. He was standing by the front door, tugging at the knob. It rattled but didn't turn. Claire groaned from the couch. "Maybe it's just swollen from the rain." "There was no rain," Ryan muttered. I climbed out of my sleeping bag and tried it myself. The knob turned, but the door wouldn't budge. It felt like pushing against a wall. That was weird enough. But it was when Jess tried the back door, the one off the kitchen, that things started to feel wrong. Because when she opened it, it didn't lead outside. It opened into the hallway. The same hallway we'd walked through the night before. We all froze. Jess shut it. She opened it again. Same thing, the hallway stretched ahead, dim and narrow. Ryan barked out a laugh that didn't sound convincing. Must be some kind of, I don't know, layout trick. Maybe there's more than one hall, but there wasn't. We checked. The cabin was tiny. There was only one hallway. And yet, both the back door and the front door now opened into it. I don't remember who suggested checking the bedroom door next. Maybe Claire. But I do remember the silence that followed, because the bedroom door opened into the hallway too. And then, the bathroom door. Every single door we tried, every knob we turned, led us back into that same narrow hallway. The cabin had stopped obeying its own floor plan. We stood in the main room, four of us breathing shallow, listening to the faint hum of silence pressing in from all sides. Ryan was the first to speak. "Okay," he said, his voice tight. "This is some kind of joke. Someone's messing with us. Hidden doors, mirrors, I don't know. It's a trick." But his eyes betrayed him. He didn't believe his own words. And neither did we. The four of us stood there for a long time, nobody moving, nobody speaking. I kept expecting something to break the silence, a car on the dirt road, a bird outside, even just a draft sneaking through the cracks in the walls. But there was nothing. No outside world at all. Just us, trapped inside wood and nails that didn't make sense anymore. Ryan started pacing. He ran his hands through his hair, muttering to himself, tugging at every knob in sight as if sheer persistence would force one of them to open correctly. Each door only brought him back into the hallway. "It's impossible," he said finally, slamming the bathroom door shut so hard the lantern on the table rattled. "You saw me open this last night." It was a bathroom. It was. So how the hell? "Stop," Claire snapped. Her face was pale, but her voice was sharp enough to cut. "Don't yell." "Why?" Ryan turned on her, his voice rising. "You think it's going to wake the neighbors?" "There are no neighbors. There's nothing out there, just emptiness." Claire just stared at him, her lips pressed tight. Jess hadn't said a word. She stood near the fireplace, her arms wrapped around herself, eyes fixed on the hallway like it was some animal crouched and waiting. I wanted to go to her, to comfort her, but I was barely holding it together myself. Instead, I picked up one of the lanterns and walked slowly into the hallway. The boards creaked under my feet. I counted 5 steps before I reached the first bedroom door. I opened it. Behind it was the hallway, the same one I was standing in. Only, I froze. The lantern light trembled in my hand. The hallway on the other side of the door didn't match the one I stood in. The boards were warped, darker, like they'd been burned. The walls bent inward, narrowing. And at the far end, just barely visible in the dim glow, was another door. A door I didn't recognize. "Don't," Jess whispered behind me. I nearly dropped the lantern. I hadn't realized she'd followed. Her eyes were wide, glassy. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Don't go in there." I swallowed hard and shut the door. When I turned back, Ryan was watching me, jaw tight. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I saw the same thought flicker across his face that was gnawing at mine. The cabin wasn't just trapping us. It was changing. The hours after that blurred together. We tested everything. We opened every door, over and over, until the brass knobs left faint bruises in the palms of our hands. No matter what, each one spilled us back into that endless hallway. Sometimes it looked the same. Sometimes it didn't. Longer, shorter, warped, angled like it shouldn't be able to stand upright. At one point, I swear I saw movement at the far end. Just a flicker. Like someone slipping around a corner. But when I blinked, it was gone. We tried the windows next. Ryan pulled one open in the kitchen, stuck his arm out into the darkness, and immediately yanked it back with a curse. His skin was covered in condensation, as if he'd reached into a freezer. When I leaned close, I saw why. The window didn't look out on trees anymore. It looked out on nothing. A flat, colorless void, stretching into black. No ground, no sky, no sound. Just nothing. Claire lost it after that. She started crying, pacing the main room, saying she wanted to go home, that she didn't care if the car couldn't get down the road, she'd walk if she had to. She grabbed her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and marched to the front door like she was going to kick it open if she had to. Ryan tried to stop her, but she was already twisting the knob. And when she flung it open, it wasn't the hallway this time. It was the main room. The exact room we were standing in. Same fireplace. Same couch. Same Claire, frozen in the doorway with her own reflection staring back at her. She screamed and slammed the door shut. The sound echoed far too long, like it was being swallowed and spit back by the walls. We stopped trying after that. The energy in the room shifted, like we'd crossed some invisible line from confusion into dread. Nobody wanted to test the doors anymore. Nobody wanted to see what new trick the cabin had waiting. We sat in silence, lanterns hissing, fire popping. At some point, I realized Jess was staring at me. Not just glancing, staring. Her pupils looked huge in the dim light, her expression unreadable. "What?" I asked, my voice shaky. She tilted her head, almost like she didn't recognize me. "Do you hear it?" "Hear what?" But she didn't answer. She just hugged herself tighter and turned back to the hallway. Ryan rubbed his hands over his face, muttering that we should sleep, that maybe it'd be better in the morning. Claire refused. She said she wasn't closing her eyes in this place for even a second. I wish I'd listened to her. Because when I woke up hours later, the lanterns had burned out, the fire had gone cold, and I was standing in the hallway. Not lying in my sleeping bag. Not curled on the floor. Standing, lantern in hand, feet bare against the boards. And at the end of the hall, where there had never been a window before, there was one now. A single square window. And on the other side of the glass, pressed up against it, was a face. I couldn't move. The face at the end of the hallway wasn't pressed against the glass like a person peering in. It was inside the glass, as though the window itself had been poured around it. It had no color, no features I could describe with certainty. Just pale impressions of eyes, a nose, and a mouth, stretched and warped as if seen through water. Its eyes, if they were eyes, shifted toward me. I stumbled back, lantern shaking in my hand. The flame sputtered, threatening to go out. And when I looked again, the window was gone. I was staring at the same blank wall that had always been there. My stomach turned. I don't know how long I stood there before I heard footsteps behind me. "Why are you up?" Ryan's voice, groggy, sharp with irritation. I spun around, heart hammering. He was squinting at me from the main room, hair sticking up like he'd just woken. Claire sat hunched on the couch, awake too, hugging her knees to her chest. My throat was dry. "I don't know. I just woke up here." Claire frowned. "Here? In the hallway?" I nodded. Ryan rubbed his face. "You were sleepwalking." "Jesus, man, don't do that." "You nearly gave me a heart attack." But the way he said it, he didn't sound convinced. None of us were. The rest of the night stretched on, slow and punishing. Every shadow seemed to move. Every creak in the boards made us jolt. Jess didn't speak again, not a word. She sat by the dead fireplace, eyes wide, lips moving like she was whispering something under her breath. I caught fragments when I leaned closer. "Not supposed to be here. Wrong door. Doesn't like us." I wanted to ask who she was talking about, but I was afraid of the answer. By morning, or what we assumed was morning, since no light came through the windows, Ryan decided we had to try again. "Cabin or no cabin, trick or no trick," he said. "We're getting out. We can't just sit here." He grabbed the lantern, marched to the back door, and threw it open. The hallway. He tried the bathroom. The hallway. One of the bedrooms. The hallway. But this time, when we all stood at the entrance looking down it, the hall didn't just stretch ahead, it breathed. The walls seemed to pulse inward and outward, wood groaning softly like it had lungs. And somewhere far down, where the lantern light couldn't reach, we heard something moving. Not footsteps. Not exactly. More like something dragging across the floor. A slow, steady scrape. Ryan slammed the door shut so hard the frame cracked. His face was gray, jaw clenched. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay. We wait." But the problem with waiting was that the cabin didn't. Time broke apart in there. I don't know if hours passed or days. We ate from the cooler until the food ran out. Then we stopped eating. Our mouths were too dry to chew anyway. The air grew heavy, damp, as if the cabin were filling with water we couldn't see. My chest felt tight all the time, like I was breathing through cloth. And then came the voices. At first, it was just faint murmurs, too low to make out. Then they grew sharper, clearer, until they seemed to seep through the walls. Sometimes I heard my own voice calling from the hallway. Sometimes I heard Claire whispering things she swore she hadn't said. Sometimes it was laughter. And once, I swear I heard my mother's voice, gentle and calm, saying my name like she used to when I was little. That broke me in a way the rest of it hadn't. Because I almost believed it. Almost stood up, opened the door, and followed it down the hall. Jess did. It was silent when it happened. We were all sitting in the main room, empty-eyed, when Jess suddenly stood and walked to the nearest door. "Jess?" Claire croaked, voice hoarse from thirst. Jess didn't answer. She opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and started walking. "Jess!" Ryan lunged after her, but when the door swung wide, the hallway was empty. No Jess. No sound. Just the warped boards stretching away into nothing. Ryan shouted her name until his voice broke. He tried stepping in after her, but Claire clung to his arm, sobbing, begging him not to. Eventually he gave up, slamming the door, fists trembling. She was gone. We never saw her again. That night, I think it was night, the voices grew louder. The hallway echoed with footsteps that weren't ours, doors opening and closing by themselves. Once, the front door creaked slowly open, and for a split second I thought I saw Jess standing there. But her skin was pale, her mouth open too wide, her eyes black pits. When I blinked, the door was shut again. Claire started rocking back and forth, muttering prayers. Ryan sat in the corner with his head in his hands. Me? I kept watching the hallway. I couldn't stop. I felt like if I looked away, if I so much as blinked too long, something would step out and take me too. And maybe that's why I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, where the dark swallowed everything, something leaned forward into the light. Not a person. Not exactly. It had the shape of one, but stretched, broken. Limbs too long, head tilted at an impossible angle, like its neck had been snapped. Its body flickered faintly, as though it wasn't fully in this place. But its face was the same I'd seen in the window. Pale, warped, eyes fixed on me. And slowly, it started walking. One step, then another. Each movement a jerk, like bones grinding together. I couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. The door slammed shut on its own, and the cabin went silent. After the door slammed, none of us moved. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the cabin. My chest ached from holding my breath, but I didn't dare exhale. I kept waiting for the door to creak open again, for that thing to step through. It never did. Instead, the silence stretched on. And in some ways, that was worse. Claire was the first to break. She started sobbing, her whole body shaking. "We're going to die here," she whispered. "It's not letting us leave. It's never letting us leave." Ryan tried to hold her, but his hands trembled so badly he could barely keep them on her shoulders. No, we're not dying here. There's always a way out. There has to be." His voice cracked on the last word. I didn't say anything, because deep down, I knew Claire was right. We lost track of time after that. I don't know if it was days or hours. Hunger stopped gnawing at us after a while. Thirst was worse, our lips cracked, tongues swollen. The only thing sharper than the pain in my body was the constant, suffocating sense that we were being watched. And we were. The hallway no longer waited for us to open doors. Sometimes we'd look up and the door to the hall would already be standing open, the darkness inside shifting like it was alive. Sometimes we'd see movement, shadows crawling along the walls, shapes bending around corners that shouldn't exist. And sometimes we'd hear Jess. Not her voice exactly. More like her words, played back wrong, distorted, like an old cassette tape unraveling. "Not supposed to be here. Doesn't like us. Wrong door." Ryan snapped after the third time. He jumped up, ripped one of the lanterns off the table, and stormed to the nearest door. Claire screamed at him not to, but he was past reason. He flung the door open, bellowing, "Take me then. You want me? Come on." The hallway was waiting. This time it didn't stretch. It dropped. The floor fell away into a black pit, bottomless, swallowing the lantern light whole. Cold air rushed out, stinking of rot. And Ryan. Ryan laughed. A high, broken sound. Then he stepped forward and vanished into the dark. The door slammed shut. Claire collapsed, shrieking, clawing at the boards until her fingers bled. I tried to pull her back, but she fought me, screaming Ryan's name, pounding on the door like if she hit hard enough it would open again. It didn't. Eventually, she went quiet. Not asleep. Not calm. Just empty. She sat against the wall, eyes glazed, mouth moving without sound. I don't know if she was praying, or begging, or already gone somewhere in her mind. That left me. Just me. And the cabin. It knew. It knew I was the last one. Every door in that place began to open, one by one. The sound echoed through the cabin, soft clicks of brass turning, wood groaning. Until every wall, every corner, every exit was nothing but doorways leading into the hallway. Dozens of them. All leading back to the same place. The same narrow stretch of boards. And from every end of that impossible hall, I heard it. The scrape. That slow, steady drag, coming closer, from all directions. I tried closing my eyes, tried pretending none of it was real, but the sound drilled through my skull. The boards beneath me rattled with each movement, dust sifting down from the ceiling as though the cabin itself was bracing for what was coming. I don't know when Claire screamed. I don't know when it stopped. All I remember is the last door. The one I hadn't seen before. It was in the farthest corner of the main room, half hidden by shadow. Old, swollen wood, hinges rusted black. The knob wasn't brass like the others. It was bone white, smooth, almost polished. I don't know why, but I reached for it. I shouldn't have. God, I shouldn't have. The second my hand touched it, the cabin went silent. The scrape stopped. The doors slammed shut all at once, shaking the walls, leaving me in total darkness. And when I opened that final door, I was back in the main room. Same fireplace. Same couch. Same table. Except Claire was gone. Jess was gone. Ryan was gone. Everything was gone, except me. And when I tried the front door, it opened easily. Morning light poured in. Birds were singing. The woods were exactly as they'd been the night we arrived. I stumbled outside, fell to my knees in the dirt, and sobbed. People asked me why I never went back. Why I never reported the others missing, never told the police, never tried to explain what happened. The truth, because I did. I went back with the sheriff 2 days later, and the cabin wasn't there. Just trees. Not even the dirt road that had let us in. It was like it had never existed. But I know it was real. Because sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the walls are still, I'll get up, half asleep, and try a door. And for just a moment, just before the knob turns, I feel the brass. Cold. Too cold. Waiting. I'm not the kind of person who usually tells ghost stories. I don't believe in half the things people whisper about, the shadows in doorways, the cries in the night, the idea that a place can hold on to whatever died inside it. But what happened that night, in that cabin, has never left me. It follows me in photographs, in dreams, in the silence of empty rooms. It started with a stupid idea, like most things do. There were 4 of us, me, Daniel, Sarah, and Marcus. We'd been friends since college, though friends might not be the right word anymore. Time changes people. Sarah had a job in the city that kept her wired and restless. Daniel carried himself like he was already 40 when he was only 27. And Marcus, well, Marcus had never grown out of trouble. But somehow, once or twice a year, we'd find ourselves back together, trying to pretend nothing had changed. That's why the cabin came up. It was Marcus's idea. He said he'd heard about a place out past the river, an old hunter's cabin left abandoned since the 80s. Supposedly, it belonged to some guy who disappeared. No one ever found his body, just his gear, left out on the porch. Locals avoided it, which of course made Marcus grin like he'd found gold. We crashed there for one night, he said, spinning a beer can on my counter. No phones, no lights, no distractions. Just us, a fire, and whatever's left of the place. Old school. Sarah had laughed, but it wasn't the light kind of laugh. You want us to sit in some stranger's dusted out shack and... What? Tell ghost stories? Exactly, Marcus said. Tell me you're not curious. Places like that, they're time capsules. Nobody touches them. We could be the first ones inside in years. Daniel gave him a long, quiet look, the kind that could cut a person in half without a word. He never liked Marcus's stunts, but he also hated being the one to say no. So, as usual, silence worked as agreement. I should have been the one to speak up, but I didn't. Maybe I wanted to see the place too. Maybe a part of me still liked chasing that sharp edge of fear with him, like we used to when we were younger. So the next Saturday, we packed a few bags, snacks, flashlights, a half-dead camera Marcus insisted on bringing, and drove out past the last paved road. The forest got darker the further we went. Trees leaned over the dirt path like they were holding secrets between their branches. By the time we stopped, the air was heavy, thick with pine and something else, like wet stone, the smell of places sunlight hasn't touched in years. The cabin sat crooked at the end of the trail, tucked against the tree line. From a distance, it didn't look like much. Wood weathered silver, windows patched with boards, a roof that sloped under the weight of years. Up close, though, it felt wrong. Not haunted, not yet. Just wrong. The door hung slightly ajar, one hinge broken, but when Marcus shoved it open, the sound was sharper than it should have been, like metal screaming. Inside, dust caught the flashlight beams in thick sheets. Cobwebs laced the corners. The air was stale, but not dead. It smelled faintly of ash, as if someone had put out a fire only a day ago. Sarah wrapped her jacket tighter around herself. "This is disgusting." "Disgusting," Marcus repeated, grinning. "Perfect word. Let's unload." Daniel and I carried the bags in. There wasn't much, just some food, bottled water, a blanket or two. Marcus had insisted on leaving most things behind to keep it authentic. Authentic, in this case, meant freezing on splintered wood floors with no signal and no way out but the forest road. Still, once the fire was lit in the stone hearth, the place almost felt alive again. Shadows bent across the walls, soft light smoothed over the cracks, and for a moment I thought maybe this would be like old times. Us, together, forgetting everything else. We talked for hours about nothing important. Work, old memories, jokes that had been repeated too many times. The fire cracked, wind brushed against the cabin's boards, and it was almost peaceful. Almost. It wasn't until Sarah pulled out her phone that things shifted. "Let's take a picture," she said. "For proof we actually did this." Marcus groaned but agreed, dragging us into a half circle near the fire. The four of us leaned close together, tired but smiling, smoke curling behind us. Sarah held the phone out, clicked the button, and laughed when the flash went off too bright. She checked the screen, and I'll never forget how fast her face changed. The smile died first, then the color. She stared, frozen, like her brain had stopped processing. "What?" Marcus asked, leaning over. "Did we blink?" Sarah didn't answer. She just turned the phone toward us. And there it was. Four of us in the frame, yes. But between me and Daniel, leaning in like he belonged there, was someone else. A man. His face pale, almost gray, but smiling wide. His eyes were too dark to make out, his hair hanging damp across his forehead. He wasn't blurred, not a trick of motion or shadow. He was clear. Clearer than we were. I felt my throat close. "That's not funny." Marcus swore under his breath. Daniel just kept staring. Sarah's hand shook so hard she almost dropped the phone. We hadn't seen anyone else that night. We hadn't even passed another car on the way up. And yet, there he was, smiling like he'd been waiting for us. No one spoke for a long time. The fire popped in the hearth, snapping us back to the room, but not one of us moved. The phone sat between us on the table now, screen glowing faintly, displaying that photo over and over. Four familiar faces. One stranger. His smile wider each time I looked. Marcus tried to laugh first. He always did. "Come on, that's some glitch, right? Exposure, double image. Happens all the time." But his voice was off. Too quick, too high. He didn't sound convinced. Daniel leaned closer, his brow tense. No look at the shadows. Look at his arm. The man's arm, God, I hadn't noticed before, was draped behind my shoulder like he'd been leaning on me the whole time. Not ghostly, not transparent. Solid. His sleeve was frayed flannel, like he'd stepped straight out of the woods and into our circle. My chest tightened. I would have felt that. I would have known. Sarah finally whispered, "I want to delete it." "No," Marcus snatched the phone back. "We need proof. If we delete it, it's gone. Then it's just some creepy memory." I hated that he was right. The fire seemed smaller now, the shadows longer. The walls of the cabin pressed closer, as if listening. Daniel stood, pacing. "Someone's here." "There's no one here," Marcus shot back, but his eyes flicked toward the door anyway. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter and shook her head. "I told you this place was disgusting. I told you." Her voice cracked. She didn't finish. We checked the cabin together, flashlights cutting through stale air. There were only 2 rooms, the main one with the fire, and a back room lined with broken shelves and a narrow cot that smelled of mildew. No sign of anyone. But I couldn't shake it. Every time I turned my light, I expected to catch that face in the beam. That smile, waiting in the corner. When we circled back, Marcus was crouched near the hearth, holding the phone again, staring hard. "His eyes," he muttered. "Look closer. They're wrong." We gathered around. He was right. Zoomed in, the man's eyes didn't reflect the firelight the way ours did. They were flat black, like pits in the photo. Empty, but pulling. Daniel exhaled sharply and pushed away. "Enough. It's a trick. Someone doctored that phone." "Who?" Sarah snapped. "Who even knew we were coming?" Daniel didn't answer. He just stared at the boarded window, jaw tight. The night dragged after that. Every sound outside was sharper now, the creak of branches, the scrape of wind across the boards. The fire's glow felt weaker, failing. None of us wanted to leave, but none of us wanted to sleep either. We sat in silence, phones dead, listening. At one point, Marcus broke it. "We should take another one." We stared at him. "To prove it's nothing," he said quickly. "If we take another photo and it's normal, we can." He trailed off when no one agreed. But part of me wanted to. Because if we didn't, then the first photo stood alone. Evidence we couldn't dismiss. Sarah shook her head violently. "I'm not doing that again." Marcus didn't push. But later, when Sarah dozed against the wall, I caught him holding the phone out anyway, angling it toward me and Daniel, trying to snap another shot. I lunged, grabbed his wrist. "Don't." His eyes were wide, desperate. "Don't you want to know if he's still here?" The words froze me. Still here. Sometime after midnight, the fire died. None of us bothered feeding it. The cold came in like a tide, settling in our bones. I couldn't sleep. My body wouldn't let me. My mind kept circling back to that arm around me in the photo. That weight I never felt, but my skin swore was there. At some point, I heard it. A shuffle. Boards shifting in the back room. My breath caught. I waited, straining my ears. Marcus and Sarah were asleep, their breathing uneven. Daniel sat against the far wall, eyes open, already watching me. "You heard it too," I whispered. He nodded once. Another sound. Not footsteps exactly, but something dragging lightly across the floor. Daniel rose quietly, motioning for me to stay put. He grabbed the flashlight, clicked it on, and pointed it toward the doorway. Nothing. Just dust and old wood. He took 2 slow steps inside. The beam quivered over shelves, the cot, a cracked mirror leaning in the corner. And then, wait. My voice broke. For just a second, before the light hit it fully, I swear I saw movement in that mirror. Not Daniel, not his reflection. Something behind him, grinning wide. But when the light steadied, it was only him. Only Daniel, breathing hard, jaw clenched. He came back, said nothing, sat down again. But I saw it in his face. He'd seen something too. We didn't last much longer. Around 3, Sarah woke screaming. We all jolted upright. She clutched her phone to her chest, sobbing, shaking her head. What? What is it? Marcus demanded, grabbing at her hands. She finally loosened her grip, and I saw the screen. Her gallery was open. Dozens of copies of that same photo filled it, our group by the fire, the stranger smiling with us, but each one was slightly different. In some, his smile stretched wider. In others, his head tilted closer to mine. In a few, his eyes weren't empty pits anymore. They were staring straight at us, sharp and unblinking. None of us had taken those. The phone clattered to the floor, face down. None of us picked it up. We just sat there in the dark, hearts pounding, knowing we weren't alone. None of us touched Sarah's phone again. It stayed face down on the floor, as though picking it up might let him crawl straight out of the screen. We tried to keep calm, if calm is even possible when your reality has cracked in half, but the air inside that cabin had changed. Heavier, thicker, like we were breathing someone else's breath. Marcus broke first. "I'm not staying," he muttered, pacing. "Forget this." We grab our stuff and we go. "I don't care if it's 4 in the morning, I'll drive all night." "There's nowhere to go," Daniel cut in, his voice like stone. "The road's a mud pit." "You want to get stuck halfway out there? With him?" Marcus stopped, fists clenched. But he didn't argue. Sarah hadn't spoken since she screamed. She sat huddled against the wall, eyes darting to the boarded windows as if expecting something to peek in. Every so often, she whispered, "Delete them. Just delete them." But no one dared. I just sat by the cold fire, arms wrapped around myself, waiting for the next sound. And it came. The first knock was soft, almost polite. We all froze. It came again, 3 taps against the wall, right behind Sarah's head. She yelped, scrambled across the floor, her hands pressed to her ears. Marcus swung the flashlight, but there was nothing. Just wood and shadow. The knock shifted, traveling. Now it came from above us, slow, deliberate thuds across the roof. Then silence. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He's not outside. The way he said it made my stomach turn. Marcus whispered, "Then where?" A loud crack cut him off. The mirror in the back room. It shattered like someone had slammed a fist into it. We all flinched, the echo ringing in our bones. For a moment, nothing. Then I heard it. A laugh. Not loud. Not hysterical. Just a quiet chuckle, too close, curling through the rafters like smoke. Sarah clamped her hands over her mouth to keep from screaming again. We didn't speak after that. Words felt dangerous, like they might draw him closer. Marcus finally lit a candle from his pack, desperate for more light, but it barely held back the dark. Every shadow looked bent, like someone standing just out of sight. I couldn't take my eyes off the broken mirror in the back room. From where I sat, I could just see the jagged shards catching the candlelight. For a second, I thought I saw a face in one shard, smiling too wide. When I blinked, it was gone. Daniel whispered suddenly, "Check the phone." "No," Sarah snapped instantly. "No, I'm not. Check it." His voice was sharp, commanding, the kind that doesn't allow refusal. Her hands shook as she picked it up. She unlocked the screen with her thumb. Her breath hitched. The gallery had changed again. The photos weren't just of us anymore. The newest images showed the cabin from outside as if someone was circling it, taking pictures through the boarded windows. Each shot came closer. The last one was from inside the room itself, right above where we sat, our huddled group lit by the wee candle, and just behind us, towering over our shoulders, that same man. Closer. Clearer. His grin wider than it should be, teeth bared, like the photo had caught him mid-laugh. Sarah dropped the phone with a scream. Marcus lunged forward and stomped on it, hard. The screen cracked, then went black. For a moment, the silence was worse than the noise. Then, A whisper, right behind me. "Why did you break it?" I spun so fast I nearly fell. No one was there. But the voice had been inches from my ear. A man's voice, low and amused. The candle gutter almost went out. Sarah started sobbing into her sleeve. Marcus, pale and sweating, said through clenched teeth, "We're leaving." "Now." "I don't care." Daniel grabbed his arm. "You think walking into the woods is safer? He's out there. He's in here. You saw those pictures." Marcus shoved him off. "I'm not sitting here waiting for him to." He stopped, stared at the wall. We all turned. There were handprints smeared across the boards. Not dusty handprints, wet, dark, glistening like something had pressed fresh into the wood. And there were 5 of them. Too high for any of us to reach. Marcus staggered back. No, 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 no. The handprints spread. More of them, sliding across the boards as though invisible palms were dragging down. Then the sound came. Nails, scraping, clawing deep into the wood, the noise like teeth grinding. Sarah covered her ears and curled in on herself. The candle blew out. We were in darkness. I don't know how long we sat like that. Seconds, minutes, it didn't matter. The dark felt endless. Then, a click. A flash. Blinding white light for half a second, then gone. My vision swam, but I knew what it was. A camera. Someone had taken another photo, but none of us had a working phone. The darkness pressed closer. My chest heaved. I couldn't see anything, couldn't even hear Sarah's crying anymore. Just my own heartbeat, pounding too fast. Then another flash lit the room. And in that frozen instant, I saw him. Standing behind Daniel. So close his mouth was nearly to Daniel's ear. Teeth bared, eyes like pits, his hand resting on Daniel's shoulder like they were lifelong friends. The light vanished again. Daniel gasped, then screamed. I lunged forward, but I hit nothing, just air. When the next flash came, Daniel was gone. There were only 3 of us left in the frame. We screamed for him, shouted his name until our throats burned. No answer. The cabin was empty except for us. But somehow, I knew. Daniel hadn't left. He was still here. Just not in the way we understood. Daniel never came back. The 3 of us sat frozen in that suffocating dark, our minds breaking under the silence. Marcus swore under his breath, pacing blindly, while Sarah rocked back and forth, whispering prayers through her teeth. I just stared into nothing, every nerve waiting for the next flash. It came. White light filled the cabin, freezing us mid-breath. This time, the photo wasn't of us. It was of Daniel. Not here, not gone, but somewhere else. He was in the broken back room, sitting stiffly on the cot, head tilted at an unnatural angle. His eyes were open but hollow, like he was staring straight through the camera. And behind him, leaning against the wall, was that smiling man. The light vanished. We were blind again. Sarah screamed, clawing at the boards on the nearest window, splinters digging into her hands. We have to get out. We have to get out. Marcus grabbed her wrist. Stop. He wants us to panic. Don't you get it? But his voice broke at the edges. He didn't believe his own words. I pressed my palms to the floor, trying to ground myself, and that's when I felt it. A vibration. Gentle at first, like footsteps through the wood. Then stronger. Closer. Something was moving under the floorboards. I scrambled back, heart hammering. He's under us. The sound grew, slow dragging, like someone crawling on their belly beneath the cabin. Boards creaked and bowed, dust spilling from the seams. Sarah shrieked and pulled free of Marcus, slamming her fists against the door. Please, please let us out. Another flash lit the room. My stomach dropped. This one showed Sarah, frozen at the door, hands bloodied from pounding, and behind her, right at her back, his face, his teeth, his hand almost brushing her hair. The light died. I grabbed for her, but before I could, something yanked. Sarah's body snapped backward, like a hook had sunk into her spine. She screamed once, short and raw, then she was gone. Just gone. The door was still shut, the boards still nailed, but she wasn't there anymore. Marcus and I were the only ones left. He collapsed to the floor, clutching his head. We shouldn't have come here. We shouldn't have. I crouched beside him, my own hands shaking. We have to move. We can't just sit here. His eyes darted to mine, wide and terrified. Move where? Don't you get it? There's no out. We're already his. The words sat heavy in my chest. I wanted to deny it, to tell him we still had a chance. But deep down, I knew. Every door, every wall, every shadow in this place belonged to him. He wasn't in the cabin. The cabin was in him. Another click. Another flash. I turned my head too late. The photo showed Marcus and me sitting on the floor, except Marcus wasn't beside me. In the picture, he was standing next to the man, shoulder to shoulder, smiling the same wide, unnatural grin. The light faded. When my vision cleared, Marcus was gone too. My chest collapsed in on itself. I was the last. Silence. Utter silence until the sound of the camera shutter again. The flash blinded me. This time, the photo was only of me. I was sitting exactly where I was now, but I wasn't alone. He was right behind me. His hand was on my shoulder. His mouth hung near my ear. The light vanished. But his hand stayed. I felt the weight of it, cold through my shirt. I froze, unable to breathe. His fingers curled slowly, pressing down, claiming me. A voice rasped against my ear, low and gleeful. Now you smile too. I don't remember what happened after. Not exactly. I woke up the next morning on the cabin floor, alone. The fire was nothing but ash. The boards were untouched. The mirror, whole again, reflected only me. My friends were gone. Their bags still sat in the corner, their shoes by the door. But of them, nothing. The only thing left was Sarah's phone, lying in the center of the room. Its screen was shattered, but when I pressed the power button, the gallery opened instantly. Hundreds of photos. At first, they were the same, our group around the fire, the stranger grinning between us. Then, Daniel alone, Sarah alone, Marcus alone. And then me. Dozens of images of me, sitting on the floor, standing in the corner, pressed against the glass of the mirror. Each one different. Each one with his hand on me. In the last photo, I wasn't even myself anymore. My mouth was stretched into his smile. My eyes were pits. And he wasn't in the frame at all. I left that cabin. I don't know how I drove, how I found the road again. All I know is I made it home before the next night fell. But sometimes, when I check my phone, I find new pictures waiting in my gallery. Photos I never took. And in every one of them, I'm not alone.